I will begin to say thank you for the organizer of this seminar, and especially the Professor Michel Aladev-Jones, Fadia Daka, and Gaia Del Negro. And I'm quite happy to be in this movement because I am working since a long time with Michel on the temporalities in adult education. And it's always a good opportunity to be able to present the work I am doing and to have time to present and to discuss about it, because it's not finished work. It's an amount of question in a way that I will present. Some part has been integrated in text, and some part has to be discussed. So the title of the presentation is Temporalities of Narrative and Kinetic Variation and Narrative Regimes. So I will begin to say how I reach to these matters. After, I will make some point on theory and methodology aspects, and I will try to finish with one example to give an idea how it works concretely. At first, just to say, I made my PhD with a professor which is Gaston Pinault. Gaston Pinault, which has been professor in Tours between 1994 until 2007. So he was one of the professors who creates the education science department in our university. And my PhD was on the learning process with in relation with travel experience. And I have used the methodology of life history to make the fields inquiry. So what I am presenting in this slide is the methodology of the life history approach in adult education. Just to say that when I will speak about narrative in adult education, I will not differentiate so much the research aspect to the training aspect, because in our university we are working with biographical narrative in research, but also we are using it for adult education. And in a way, it's possible to think that it's needing to have improved in the first person perspective, the biographical narrative experience, to be able to use it in a research perspective, to use it in a relevant manner in a research perspective. And so what is present in this slide is how we are using the biographical narrative approach in adult education with different steps. And the last one is, I will not explain all, but the last step is maybe to focus on it, is that we are not using biographical approach to make analysis of the history of the adult, but we are using it to work in a thematic perspective with adult and working with all the story which has been shared in the program. So it means shortly that we are never trying to make interpretation of the history. We are using express history as the data to identify common thematics through individual stories. Okay, so to make it shortly, I am having some first background in biographical approach in research, but I have worked during I have worked with another professor in the same time that I would like to present, which is Pierre Vermersch. And Pierre Vermersch is a French psychologist who was working in the work analysis and maybe work activity analysis. He made his PhD with Jacques Leplat, which is some professor in France who has been one of the pioneers of the didactic professionnel, we say. And Vermersch at the beginning was trying to create a method to be able to help the adult to express how he is doing concretely in a singular situation. So he created a technique of interview, which is focused on description of action. So to make it differently, like he creates a technique of interview which is not trying to grasp the representation of adult, also not the opinion of adult, also not the all the mind and we will say the judgment of adult is the interview. This technique of interview is focusing on the description of action, means how the people are doing in a specific situation with a specific action. And in this slide, I have presented the two books of Vermersch. The blue one, which has been published in 1994, is called the Entretien d'explicitation. So the theoretical ground of this book is based on the theory of Jean Piaget on the, we are saying in France, the prise de conscience. It's maybe some awareness process in psychology. But the second book, which is the white one below, it is called Explicitation and Phenomenology, and it has been published in 2011. And this is the move. In this second book, Vermersch took distance with the theory of Jean Piaget, or maybe he didn't took distance, but he chose to ground his methodological approach in phenomenology. And that's why in 2015, in the English title of this technique, it was called the microphenomenological interview. Phenomenological interview means how to describe action at the microprocessor level, but also how to describe the part of experience which is based on the sensitive experience, sensitive part, like atmosphere, like body sensation, like ambience perception. So it's with phenomenology, it's opening the interview technique to the more than only action, but all what is lived by the subject, by the adult, at the phenomenological level. And so I have worked with these two professors during, actually I am again working with Pinot in the biographical approach. And I am again working with the network of Vermersch, but Vermersch died in 2020. So I am more working now with the authors, which is Nathalie Deprat, which is the author of the book, which is having the yellow cover, which is which have worked very long time with Vermersch, and they wrote a book, Vermersch, Francisco Varela, and Deprat, and between cognitive science, psychology, and phenomenology. And it has, so I will come back there after. So at some moment, I saw that these two approaches of narrative, the biographical approach and the microphenomenological approach, is having the, I would say, some common soil. I don't know if we can say that. Some unique basement, maybe. And this is what I have tried to show with the notion of kinetic variation and narrative regime. And so if I make it shortly, and this is bringing us to the temporalities. If I am making it very shortly, but it can be practical. In a way, what is differentiating biographical approach to microphenomenological interview? This is the time of scale which is grasped during the narration. In the biographical approach, the experience which is bring to language and put in stories is a long period of time, like maybe all the life of adult. And on the opposite part, with microphenomenological interview, the experience which is grasped is a very short moment of time. Like it can be 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 minutes, 1 hour, but it's a very, very short moment. And what I have tried to show is that a first consequence of this point is that this is narrative in the two technique, but the way to narrate the experience is different. The operation the adult has to do to make story of a long period of time is not the same. This is not the same process that what has to be done to describe a very short moment of time. And second consequence, maybe, it is needing to learn and to develop capacity to be able to make a narrative of long period of time. And it is also needing long time of training to be able to describe in details very short period of time. So this part is on the methodological aspect, but what I also try to study is that it's possible to consider that what we can understand from experience through narrative is depending on the scale of time we are grasping during the inquiry. It means that if I am making a narrative of life history, I will be able to put in the text or in the expression some element of my life, but some will never access to the story because the technique of narrative is not permitting to express some part of experience because there is no space for it, because there is no time for it, or maybe because the way to put in words, to word the experience, or to configure the story is not allowing to express some part of experience. So I was interested to see how it's possible to make variation actually in the kinetic regime of the narrative, but also by consequences to give place in the expression of some part of experience which will not be present in the text if we are not making some kind of regulation in the narrative. So this is what I have tried to summarize in the sentence, which is the last one in this slide. The methodological consequence of this proposal is that the guidance of the narrative interview is based on organized from a longitudinal, processual, and kinetic perspective. Longitudinal means that we will follow in a way, the chronological or the diachronic movement of experience. Processual means that we can choose some scale for the time of the narrative, and kinetic is we can interfere on the speed of the narrative. And I have tried to make it with this figure, which is quite simple, but actually it's too simple, but I love it like that. Just to give example, like I used to give this example, like now I am 52 years old. So if I am having I am having even 2 hours or 3 hours to express my story, anyway, it's needing for me to compress the time, means to keep 52 years of life in a story which will take 60 minutes to be expressed. So, of course, with this process, I need to cut, I need to choose, I need to select fact, events, element of experience, and I will have to configure with this element the story I will be able to express and to write if I am making a book. But in a way, I am supposed at first to select, second one to ordinate in time, and third one to link these events together. So it means that the improved experience, the life experience improved, is more long and more huge than the narrative, which will be able to say this experience. So in the Vermeersch vocabulary, it was called in French we were saying vécu de référence. Vécu de référence is what I have stated, the live experience narrated. This is the experience I have concretely improved. Like now, I am speaking since already 20 minutes. So it means like the vécu de référence of my conference is 20 minutes. It's what I have lived. And the narrated, the VN is the time which is permitting me to say and to express this story. So it's giving some kind of ratio. And for the microphenomenological description, the vécu de référence is less huge than the time allowed it to word the experience. So we can, for example, we made with Vermeersch or with Deprat or with Claire Petit-Mangin some kind of workshop, like we were having some vécu de référence like during 10 seconds, and we were having 20 minutes to describe. So it means from this approach, we will have more time to word the experience that the time which was the real time of the experience improved. And what is bringing to do that? For example, if we are doing it with some aesthetic experience or some sensitive experience like taste, that we can discover that we are experiencing very, very many elements in a short time, but this experience is lived without to be understood in a thematic way. So what is bringing what's the possibility of the microphenomenological description? This is to become aware of some part of experience that we are living without to realize that the qualitative part of what is experienced. Like, for example, Gaia proposes some music from Brazil. It was song, it was atmosphere. For me, I was remembering different moments I have lived in Brazil. That I have lived without to notice that so many elements were coming to me at the contact of music. If I am making microphenomenological description, I can word this part of experience in details, and maybe I can learn many things from it. So, it was to make it schematically how we can integrate the two techniques, description, biographical narration, and phenomenological description. So it was my first part. So just I will. So it has bring me to be interested in the research field to the theory of scale in social science. That's why I propose this book here. That I said that already some word about it, but what is bringing the ability during the interview? We could say the self-interview, because Vermeersch was working on the two aspects, and I think they are linked. We can work to understand our own experience using this kind of approach, and we can also work with others in the interview to be able that they will in research that the people who are involved in the inquiry, we will at this moment the researcher will propose some kind of guidance of the interview, and this guidance will have influence on the speed of the narration of the people who are involved in inquiry. Concretely, to make intervention or guidance about it, it can be said, okay, that's quite interesting. And if we go further now, go ahead. And it could be on the opposite. Okay, that's quite interesting. But if we take more time on this aspect, on this event, on the sensation you had there, if we take time, and if you take time to describe it, what you could say. So this approach is making guidance only with the speed of time. It's not giving contents in the interview. It's not proposing direction. It's just based on the development of narrative and just proposing to go more fast or more slow. More fast, something like, and after what has happened. More slow is, if we can take some moment for that, if you could describe this part, what could you say? And this this perspective is based on the theory that the variation of speed is allowing to manifest some part of experience in the text or in discourse, because it's belonging to a specific speed of narration. This is from this point that the notion of scale is used. And it's, so this part is, for me, it should be verified or tested in research, but there is tradition on it about the theory of scale in human science research, and that's why I have proposed the book there. But I have to say that this book is coming from the researcher in history, and specifically in microhistory, especially with the theory of Ginsburg, who was working on initial sign in the history science. But I have used it for my work, and also just to mention that I have been also interested in the narratology fields, which is having, and especially in Switzerland with some researcher like Raphael Baroni, we could say the contemporary narratology research, which, and the book I am presenting there is especially working on the notion of fact in narrative. And this one is coming from Françoise Lavocat in France, who write a book between fact and fiction, 400 pages to differentiate what is in narrative, what is a fact, and what is the border between fact coming from events which has been lived and fiction, and is there any border, actually, is there any clear border between these two parts, which is quite important for narrative in research, because there is so many questions about what is subjectivity, what we can call a fact in the narration in first-person perspective. And the book is also working on the kinetic and sequence. So I gave this example just to say that this approach has bring me to read and to study with narratology work. And okay, and I will also, to keep the theoretical aspect, propose one definition in narratology to differentiate the narrative regime between biography and description. So it's coming from Claude Bremont, which is a narratologue, French narratologue, And so the sentence is the following one: any narrative consists of a discourse integrating a succession of human events in the unity of a single action. So we are finding there the notion of fact, but there is also in this definition the idea of succession. So in the theory of Breton, the narrative is needing time, but chronological time with succession of fact, and it's needing to be linked to make a single unit, which is the story. And he is adding, where there is no succession, there is no narrative, but, for example, description. So in the theory of Breton, and we could say in the theory of narratology, this is when the time of the narrative is stopped, that we are changing the regime of wording. We are not anymore in narration, but we are in the description process. So for me, it was an interesting definition, and it has bring me many discussion with Vermeersch, because when we are thinking about the description of experience, it's a theoretical question. We could say that the time is never stopping in the lived experience. There is no possibility, maybe, to stop the flux of time and to use one sequences independently of the other. Even the most short scale of time is having its own dynamic of flowing. That's why I propose that when we are working with experience, this definition between description and narration is not, I would say there is no ontological difference between description and narration. When what is described is experience, there is a link, which is the speed of the narration. And microphenomenological description is a very slow speed of flux, and narration is a high speed of flux. We could tell like that. That this is from this way that I propose to say that life history and microphenomenological description can be seen together in the narrative interview. And the last, before some example, this is the theory of plot coming from Ricoeur. Just to differentiate what is the chronological dynamic in the narration and what is the configuration process in the story. So the act of setting a plot combines in varying proposition two temporal dimensions, one chronological, the other non-chronological. The first is the episodic dimension of narrative. It characterizes the story as made of events. The second is the configuring dimension itself, through which the plot transforms events into a story. So why I was interested by that, and always to keep in mind the theory of scale, this is that I thought that when during the interview, the time is getting more slow, in a way, it can bring to the possibility to consider differently the logic of the story. Because it's possible to think that the way the way the experience has been put in words is influenced by the speed of the narrative. So, and it's giving effect on the logic of the text. So, one of my hypotheses is that if the speed of the text is getting slowly, or is slowing down, it's possible to bring effect on the logic from which the narrative is configured. It was some part of my research I was wanting to investigate. So, so just to finish part 3, I will propose what I am doing with that in research. So I will not come back on the interview guidance. I will just show some data. And actually, I am realizing that I will begin to show not data, but the way I am trying to analyze data. So it's not very logic, but it's just to give example. So this one, this is the way I have tried to pre-analyze some data coming from a narrative. The thematic is we could say the period during which this is my story actually. This is a narration of a 6 months life period during which a doctor said to me that I was carrying some maladie rare, means some uncommon sickness. And so what you are having in the, so I am using that to show graphically how the analysis is done. So on the top, there is U1, U2, U3, U4, U5. So this is a block of experience which has been identified in the narration. So I have to say that in the narrative interview, the guidance is proposing to the adult to begin at the beginning of the experience which will be narrated. And the guidance, as I said before, is maintaining the narration on a chronological dimension. So it means that the proposition is, I am proposing you to come back at the beginning of the experience you will narrate, and I will propose you sometimes to get further, to get slowly. And but anyway, I will maintain the expression on a chronological perspective. So it's bringing some, in a way, it's giving some story as data, if I am thinking about the research context, which is already organized in a temporal and longitudinal perspective, in the verbatim, I would say. So from it, it's possible after to try to, I don't know if it's possible to say that in English, to periodize, to make period in the story. Some will be long, like 3 months. The U1 is almost 6 months, and the U2 is 2 months, and the U3 is 3 minutes, and the U4 is 3 months, and the U5 is 1 month. So it means that it's giving some data which are having the characteristic to be organized with time, because that's with the student I am having in research. I am sometimes disappointed when they are using biographical approach in research inquiry, and at the end they are making analyses without to take any care about time. Maybe it's not so interesting to make biographical interview and not to take care about time in analysis. So in the example I am showing now, this is the opposite. We are the first part of analysis is trying to find the scale of time in the narration, and after with the S1, S2, S3. So in my example, the U1 is having after. This is called in explicitation the granularity of the narrative. So we will say the U1 is having four scale. The U2 is having 5 scale, and the U3 is having 13 scale. So it means that for the U3, the speed of the expression in relation with lived experience was very slow, so we get a very intense detail in the description. So, and these details are having different dimensions. What the doctor said, what was the aspect of body, what's the atmosphere in the room with doctors, what is doing the doctors, what is noticing on my face, because it was mine, what I have react when he said to me that he's thinking that I am sick. So I am using this example just to give the idea that if the narration is slowing down and extremely slowing down, what is bringing is a lot of details on a specific moment. So of course, in the narrative approach, we cannot have the same level of details in all stories because it will take so much time. So what I am trying to show with this example is that what is the consequences for data to slow down the expression, actually, could be said like that. And my second example is, okay, so this is just to show the logic of using this kind of narrative inquiry. So I have done an article for a review, and I have proposed this example. This is to show where is time and how is working time in the narration. So this one is so I am trying to understand how I am dealing when I am in a conference with traductors. So just to say, like, I used to go in Brazil actually, and I am not speaking any word of Portuguese. So I used to have somebody who I will accord myself to be able to be understood by the audience. And so the first narrative is expressing some first moment of conference I will give, and it is the duration of the lived experience in the text is maybe 5 minutes. So this is the very beginning of the conference. So I will say this is a kind of microphenomenological description of the beginning of a moment of conference. And I will say also that this is a narration in a first-person perspective. So it means I am describing a short moment at the beginning of a specific conference. And there is time. because we can see that there is different sequence of time which are described and which are creating the narration. The second example, so I am giving it, but I am saying again, the first description in this example is in a specific situation with a short moment in a first person perspective. It means I have lived this experience and I am giving story about it. The second example is more biographical narration. I am beginning with a conference I have given in 2019 in Belo Horizonte in Brazil. And I am giving another example which has been 1 month later in Brescia in Italy. So the first narration was 5 minutes duration of lived experience. This one is almost 3 months. So this is not the same. This is the same situation, activity of conference with producers, but actually what is expressed in the first text is not the same that in second text. In the first text, there is, I can show it again. There is some element about how I am feeling the atmosphere, how I am getting, how I am trying to find some common rhythm between me and my traductors, how I am grasping the way he's understanding the thematic I will present. In the second text, because this is in a biographical approach, in a way I am giving two facts. I am not giving so much detail about how I am doing specifically, and I am almost thinking in a thematic way about what is to be translated actually. So this is different. I am not saying there is one perspective which is more interesting than the other, but the elements coming from experience are not having almost the same nature of content. And the third one, so the third one, we could say this is almost not a narration. This is a kind of, it could be said in a third person perspective, because there is almost no time actually. I am thinking about what is to be translated without to refer about a specific situation. I am making analyses about the activity I used to do, about when I am in a situation to be translated for conference. So I have tried to show with these three examples that what is to be in a microphenomenological perspective and which kind of process we can grasp this word in this technique, what is bring to use biographical narration, and what is a text which looks like as if narration, but which is not narration actually, because this is expressing of thematic thinking based on experience, but based on experience which are not given as a soil for reflection actually. So just to finish like that, but maybe it can be useful. For Depraz, she is differentiating the narration in the first person perspective And en français, we are saying en première personne et à la première personne. If I am saying en première personne, I will say in this situation, when I began, I began to take care about. So I am in contact with the experience I have improved during the narration. So this is called en première personne, but if I am saying à la première personne, it means when I am translate, I am quite attentive to the reaction of the people, the person who will put in words in Portuguese in my conference. Actually, I am not in narration because I am not based on time. I am saying when I am translate, but when I am translate is referring to many situations. Actually. Can be a common situation, average situation, what I am calling the typical one, which is for me the typical situation of being translated. But this typical situation is not having place in time. This is she get out from the time scale of experience. Okay. So maybe I will finish like that because actually it's ring, and also because this is where I am, maybe where I am now with this thematic in my work. So thank you very much.